Hello, everyone. Welcome into Above My Pay Grade. As Europe prepares for potential blackouts this winter, I want you to think about why the government might not actually warn the people. So, in my experience, government's very reactionary. um, they don't want to. Same with central banks. If the central bank said, and they're still saying today, recession. I don't know if recession's going to come, and everyone who's paying attention is like, yeah, it's here, and it's getting worse. But they don't want to admit to the dire circumstances that may be ahead because they're going to kind of make that like a self fulfilling prophecy, kind of like with inflation. They kept saying inflation's transitory, and so they don't want people to react to what they're saying. The same thing in government when it comes to blackouts. They want people to think that there's no possibility of blackouts because if they said, "Hey, 100% possibility, you're going to turn on your heat and it's not going to work this winter," people are going to freak out, start running to the grocery store, buying up all the goods, yada yada yada. So one of the things that could happen during the blackout is think about how much a bank relies on electricity, right? How often do people use cash? In Germany, believe it or not, about 60% of people use cash, or 60% of transactions use cash. People still are using cash in Germany. And they're preparing, at least some of the central banks and some of the commercial banks are actually preparing for potential of a blackout this winter. So even if government officials aren't saying anything, um, there's central banks and commercial banks that are actually taking this seriously and maybe probably getting insider information from the government. So let's take a look at this article from Reuters here. So it says exclusive Germany steps up emergency cash plans to cope with blackout. So, like I said, Germany, about 60% of their transactions still use cash. German authorities have stepped up preparations for emergency cash deliveries in case of blackouts to keep the economy running because if no electronic payments are being taken, the only way the economy keeps running is through cash. Not to mention, when fear, uncertainty, and doubt comes in, people typically want to take, if they can't access their funds, they're going to go to the bank and probably do a run on the bank, meaning, hey, give me the cash that I have deposited in here. They're going to realize very quickly that because of fractional reserve lending, these banks don't have the cash sitting in the bank, which will create even more uncertainty because people will start freaking out even more. For the people that involved, said as the nation braces for possible power cuts arising from the war in Ukraine. I've talked about this before. Uh, Officials and banks are looking at distribution, discussing, for example, priority fuel access for cash transporters, if they have to ration fuel. Commenting on preparations that accelerated in recent weeks after Russia throttled gas supplies. Well, Europe and Janet Yellen put a cap on Russian gas, so I don't know why it's more expensive. So stupid. The planning discussion involved the central bank, its financial market regulator, BaFin, and multiple financial industry associates, said the people, some of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity about plans that are private and in flux. So they're thinking, and just think about your own life, how much you use your debit card, how much you use your phone. If those things aren't working, how do you purchase anything? The whole system shuts down. And especially in Germany, where a lot of people use cash, they go to the cash machine, it doesn't work. They go to the bank and they start freaking out. They do a run on the bank. You can see the problems there. Although German authorities have publicly played down the likelihood of a blackout, like I said, they're never going to admit to something that's a possibility, even with um, even with the pandemic. Remember early 2020? Did you hear any world leader talking about it? It wasn't a concern until it was a concern. So they'll start talking about blackouts once you have blackouts. Same thing in other parts of Europe. The discussions show that both how seriously they take the threats and how they struggle to prepare for potential crippling power outages caused by soaring energy costs or even sabotage. Access to cash is a special concern for Germans who value the security and anonymity it offers, and who tend to use it more than other Europeans. And some in Germany still hold Deutschmarks, replaced by euros more than 2 decades ago, which is pretty wild. Parliamentary report a decade ago warns of discontent and aggressive altercations in case citizens were unable to get their hands on cash in a blackout. Huh. Aggressive altercations. Sounds like social unrest. Again, as the system breaks down, which the root of all this is a currency crisis, it plays itself out in other things like commodities, but the reason, in my humble opinion, that the world is breaking down is the currencies are collapsing, and because when currencies collapse, if they're the communication network, right, of value in an economy, and the communication network is broken, it's going to lead to a lot of other things breaking down as well. If a blackout struck, one option for policymakers could be to limit the amount of cash individuals withdraw, said one of the people. Oh, more government overreach. This doesn't, they play these things out in like a war room. They, it's like moving chess pieces around, and they don't. Oftentimes, central planners don't think about human nature, which blows my mind. And what human beings will do if they feel like, let's say they go to the bank and they can't get their money out. And not just one person, but millions of people. What will those people do? And how fragile the system is, because the system is built on trust. And what happens when trust goes away? You saw that in the FTX collapse the last couple of days. Trust broke down literally overnight, and the FTT token went to zero, and FTX went bankrupt pretty much overnight, all because of trust. The reality of FTX was the same the day before the bankruptcy. It's just people realized it, trust went away. That's the same thing that can happen in the banking system, in my humble opinion, because once a lot of people don't even know what fractional reserve lending is, don't know that the bank doesn't even have their money in there. And so during a blackout, if people run to get cash and they can't get it, people start asking questions, and eventually it leads to trust breaking down. Further reading here, Germany's disaster office. Oh, cool, they have a disaster office. I wonder how you apply for that. I got my degree in disaster management. Anyways, their disaster office said it recommended people keep cash at home for such emergencies. How much, though? Months, years worth? German financial regulators worry that banks are not fully prepared for major power outages and view it as a new, previously unforeseen risk, said the official with direct knowledge of the matter. Cash would be the only official payment method that would still work during a blackout, said Thomas Leiter, chief of Comrie, a company that advises cities on planning for blackouts and other catastrophes. How else will the ravioli cans and candles be paid for? Leiter said. Just imagine, you can kind of mentally rehearse this, how bad it would be if the literal communication system, electricity, your phone, how the banking system works, if money was just overnight turned off. How much pandemonium do you think there would be? No matter how bad you wanted it, you couldn't pay for anything. It would be pandemonium. And so for some reason, banks are just figuring this out in Germany. And methinks that these banks are figuring it out. This is just a guess, because they, unlike the government, they actually have to prepare for these kind of things. And the government, again, can't warn or can't be honest with the people. They can't give them the information because they are worried that they'll start pandemonium. Well, obviously in Europe, if this happens to Europe, I don't think we're going to necessarily have the same energy collapse because they're not as reliant on other countries here in the United States. However, What do you think it's going to do to prices around the world? What do you think it's going to do to trust in trade? Yada, yada, yada. I've said this before, but if Germany has to pick between freezing in the winter and paying for Russian gas in rubles, which one do you think they're going to pick? Which one do you think the people care more about? Not paying for Russian gas in rubles or not freezing? I'm going to go with not freezing. Okay. So, uh, upheaval in NATO could be around the corner, my humble opinion, unless they get their energy from somewhere else, and that's not happening yet. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. See you guys in the next one. Peace.